common definition of a video game is an electronic game that involves interaction with a user interface or input device, such as a controller, to generate visual feedback from a display device, most commonly shown in a video format on a monitor of some kind. As in other game formats, a video game keeps you busy. You need to complete objectives, either by competing against other people for victory, or working to achieve a goal, either by yourself or together with team members. Fundamentally, this means that a video game should be occupying your time, tasking you to engage with its mechanics. Drive your car to this village, kill these bad guys, solve this puzzle, talk to this character, score a goal, whatever. They should be commanding your attention at all times, almost compelling you to keep playing, because that's what video games are, a pastime. I'm lying, of course. I wouldn't be making this video if I believed that. In fact, tons of video games don't function like this. As I've played more and more games over the years, I've come to realize that many of my favorites actively do the opposite. They ask you to stop and take a break, rest a bit, or maybe reflect and contemplate. But why? What makes video games different from other types of games? From 1958, when physicist William Higginbotham created Tennis for Two, to now, computer technology has come a long way, and so, naturally, have video games. It has come to the point where video game clips are hard to distinguish from reality. In that time, video games have developed as an art form just as much as a pastime. As video games have improved graphically, a lot of emphasis has been put on aesthetic appeal. Many titles released within the past decade show this trend with cinematic cutscenes and immersive gameplay. Development studios now hire professional composers to write and perform full soundtracks for their games. It's a whole production that rivals the intensity of film production. The video format of video games also makes the concept of telling a story an obvious evolution to the medium once the technology was good enough. You can create a narrative for players to follow to complement gameplay. It's an easy way to keep people engaged. This can be presented to the player via cutscenes, in-game notes that the player can pick up, or even through the gameplay itself. This fleshes out the world you're experiencing and makes it feel more alive. Compare this expanded definition of video games to the one I started with, and you start to understand what people mean when they say it's not just a game. I want to go back and talk about those moments where games want you to take a break. They evoke emotions in me that no other medium can. It feels a bit like nostalgia, but it doesn't apply to the past. It's a feeling of appreciation and gratitude for what I'm experiencing. The closest words I could find that fit this description were anomia and sonder, but neither of them quite managed to hit the nail on the head. So for the sake of convenience, I'm just going to call moments that make me feel this way vibe checks from now on. In my first draft of this script, I started by talking about Elden Ring. To give you a brief summary, Elden Ring is an action role-playing game where the player navigates through a fantasy world filled with enemies and other challenges. It's notorious for being one of the most difficult, unforgiving, and downright unfair games ever. The reason I wanted to talk about it was because I experienced that feeling countless times playing Elden Ring. But that doesn't make any sense. How does a video game whose main gameplay loop looks like this also make me feel like this? I think the answer is atmosphere. The official definition of atmosphere in this context is the pervading tone or mood of a work of art, but I find that definition to be incredibly vague, so I'm going to try and expand on it. To me, atmosphere is an amalgamation of minute details and design choices in a work of art that are usually separate from theme or plot, yet still manage to convey intense emotion to the individual experiencing it. Atmosphere is why you see shots from movies that you've never seen like this. feel something, even though you have no idea what's going on. It's an experience that envelops you, captivates you, and it's often hard to describe. What was so good about that movie? You just have to see it for yourself. The first type of vibe check I want to talk about is the sitting spot. Are you fucking serious? The first type of vibe check I want to talk about is the sitting spot. A sitting spot is a location where the game offers you a button prompt to sit down. There will usually be some scenery for you to observe as you sit. They have no direct significance in terms of gameplay, they're just there for you to catch a break and contemplate on your journey so far. A notable instance of this is Hollow Knight, a game that is very similar to Elden Ring in terms of its difficulty. These spots are few and far between, but I always appreciated them when I came across them. They gave me an excuse to drop my guard during a journey that was otherwise fraught with peril at every turn. I think these spots were included to help with the game's pacing. Metroidvanias, the genre that this game belongs to, tend to be very bloated gameplay-wise, not giving players much rest between combat encounters. The developers wanted to improve on the formula with their addition. I also think they align nicely with Hollow Knight's sorrowful, melancholic aesthetic. Night in the Woods, on the other hand, has no combat at all. Gameplay in this game takes a backseat in favor of a touching narrative about May, a homesick college dropout, who doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life now that she has returned home. You control May from day to day, walking around town, hanging out with old high school friends, and maybe discovering the deep, dark secret this small town has buried. The sitting spots seem a lot less out of place in this game, which is a lot more focused on the day-to-day experiences of normal people. Funnily enough, although the two games are completely different, the sitting spots in Night in the Woods have a similar function to those in Hollow Knight, but instead of pacing combat, they pace the narrative progression. May goes through a lot of emotional turmoil throughout the game, and the sitting spots offer a moment for you as the player to reflect on what has happened to her throughout the day. I chose to talk about sitting spots first because they're the most basic form of vibe check and the easiest to execute. You just build some pretty scenery in a predetermined location and give players a button prompt to sit down. No gameplay mechanics to worry about, no way to break or misunderstand their intended purpose. The next form of vibe check is the safe room. Unlike the sitting spot, the safe room holds immense significance to the gameplay of the titles it's found in, survival horror games. Survival horror is a genre of horror games that emphasizes slow, tense gameplay. Players must navigate through dark, claustrophobic environments while managing extremely limited resources and fighting off or avoiding absurdly tough monsters. Safe rooms are calm areas of guaranteed safety. Even when enemies have been chasing you, entering a safe room will cause them to walk away, resetting their aggression. Other safe room benefits include stations that save your game's progress, and interconnected safes to store or replenish resources. The relief you feel finding a safe room in a survival horror game is the equivalent of reaching your front door after the worst day of your life. The most well-known franchise that incorporates safe rooms is Capcom's Resident Evil series. They actually pioneered the practice all the way back in 1996 with the release of the original Resident Evil. Some other honorable mentions are The Evil Within and Signalus. Safe rooms are also accompanied by calm yet eerie music. You're listening to some of it now. It's not happy or upbeat in any way. In fact, hearing happy music in a horror game tends to have the opposite effect. It comes off as suspicious and unnerving. The safe room is more of a return to neutral, as Jacob Geller puts it in his video essay, Why Do Horror Games Sound So Beautiful? I highly recommend you check it out. Its purpose is to soothe your troubled mind and tense body, letting you forget your troubles for a brief moment. Now I have to admit, I only recently played my first survival horror game, Signalus. But from what I understand, its gameplay is very reminiscent of the original Resident Evil. Signalus is a quirk that makes it stand out from other survival horror titles, however. It takes the whole limited resources thing to the extreme. The Resident Evil franchise, as well as others, have toyed with the concept of a small personal inventory. This means that you only have so much space in your pockets to fit things such as ammo, healing items, or key items. You have to plan your trips to and from safe rooms carefully, only bringing as much or little as you may need, since you will only have so much more space to pick up extra items on your travels. Guns and miscellaneous accessories, on the other hand, have their own separate inventory, meaning that you have less to worry about in terms of storage space. Signalus says screw all that. You have 6 inventory spaces, and every item goes into that inventory, including guns and passive upgrades. You just got a flashlight that's required to enter some rooms? Too bad. Takes up an inventory space. You want to bring a gun and extra ammo? -2 inventory spaces. A healing item? 1 more inventory space. Now you have 2 remaining spaces in your inventory and you just entered a room with no less than 4 crucial items in it, but you only have 2 spaces. This means you have to pick up 2 things, run all the way back to the safe room, and then back to pick up the 2 other items. I visited the safe rooms a lot in Signalus. When you beat the game, you get to see a bunch of stats from your save, and mine said that in my 10-hour playthrough I saved somewhere around 80 times. That's a lot. Due to the sheer quantity of time I spent in safe rooms, I became intimately familiar with the theme that plays in them. I think it's beautiful. It managed to float around the edges of my awareness, fading in and out as I was preoccupied with managing my inventory and saving my progress. Signalus gets very weird in the last couple of chapters, making you question reality. The environments you walk through have changed, but the safe rooms stay the same. They always have the storage safe, the save station, and that song. The next type of vibe check I want to talk about is the Bonfire. The Bonfire is a staple of Dark Souls, a video game series that was made by From Software, which just so happens to be the development studio that later made Elden Ring. Bonfires are more generally found in the Souls-like genre, which revolves around exploration, combat, and character progression. Players navigate intricate environments and engage in intense battles against tough enemies and bosses, learning their attack patterns and finding opportunities to strike. With each victory, players earn experience points and/or currency, which can be used to level up their character, acquire new equipment, and enhance their abilities, allowing them to face even greater challenges. In Souls-likes, the Bonfire serves as a crucial checkpoint and rest point for the player. It allows them to replenish their health, restore healing items, and repair equipment. Additionally, Bonfires function as respawn points, preserving progress and allowing players to retry challenging encounters. Now, as you may have noticed from the gameplay footage I've been showing, the Bonfire isn't necessarily a literal bonfire, but I'm calling them that because the Dark Souls bonfires are the easiest and most well-known example. My computer wallpaper is currently an artistic representation of what it feels like to sit at a bonfire in a Souls game. You've been battered and bruised by enemies that have no right being as difficult as they are. You barely made it to the bonfire, but you've lit it. You sat at it, you're safe, and that's good enough for now. Different Souls-likes treat bonfires differently, but there are some common mechanics between all of them. First, when you sit at one, it heals all your health. Second, it sets a checkpoint. Third, it respawns all of the enemies you have killed since your last save. This may seem like a bad thing, but killing enemies is how you level up in a Souls-like. So allowing them to respawn means that there's an unlimited supply of experience or money or whatever the game uses to let you level up. So in any situation you're in, a bonfire will warrant a sigh of relief. One of my favorite variations of the Bonfire is in a game that I talked about before, Hollow Knight. As I said before, Hollow Knight's an extremely difficult game, so the feeling you get when finding a bench in a new area after frantically running through a maze of rooms, dodging attacks from enemies you've never encountered before, all while on super low health, is something else. Also, the music that plays when you're near a bench is literally called Reflection. I feel like I don't need to say much more than that. The final type of vibe check I want to talk about is beautiful scenery. Yep, that's it.
But come on, these views.
This one's probably the easiest to understand for non-gamers because it's something that isn't exclusive to video games. When you sit down at a bench in a park or go on a hike, you're enjoying the scenery. And you can do the same in video games. The difference with nice views in video games is that they were handcrafted by a team of skilled and dedicated developers. And for that reason, I have a different type of admiration for these moments. I always think of the amount of time and effort that must have been put into making what I consider to be a work of art, one that's most likely going to be underappreciated. Beautiful scenery is the vibe check that people miss the most, simply because it's not incorporated into the gameplay. It's something that you have to figure out for yourself, which makes those moments that much more personal and unique. Modern day life is stressful. You wake up early, go to work, make money, pay taxes, feed yourself, take care of a family, save for retirement, yada yada yada. People think that if they spend a moment of their day not doing something productive, then that time is wasted. On the contrary, it's important to give yourself breaks. Maybe it's to take a nap, maybe it's to meditate, maybe you just want to sit and think about your life. These moments pace your day, giving you a rest and allowing you to organize your thoughts and emotions. Don't believe me? Take a look at video games.